Should we drink soda, liquid death, maybe some Fiji, or I think I'll take this one. Hey everybody, I hope you all are doing well and welcome back. And for those of you who know, December and January, these are the key months for hunting down the big game of the whiskey world, and basically it turns into a whiskey Royal Rumble. That is especially if you are looking for bourbon, because whether you are a member of the Tater Syndicate, and a whiskey enthusiast, a whiskey voyeur, or just a whiskey random, you are going to ultimately have to end up battling it out if you want a bottle of the most coveted, the most hyped, the most overpriced, and most well-known members of the family of bourbon, that is Pappy Van Winkle. So today we are talking about how I got this one of the rarest members of the Pappy Van Winkle bottles, the Van Winkle 13-year-old rye, and the various shenanigans that are employed by grocery stores and liquor stores and Costco and yes, even Total Wine to devise a way to allocate these bottles and make the most money out of what is liquid gold. Now, before we get to it, if you like these videos, if you like the unbottlings, the unboxings, the reviews, the wanders, the tastings, the hauls, and really all the great stuff we got cooking up for you, and we got a ton of great stuff cooking up for you, don't forget to like and subscribe, because it really does. It helps the channel. It's great for your Whiskey Mojo, and you get notifications when our newest videos come out on Sundays, and sometimes in between. All right, now, let's get down to the video. All right, so let's start this off right with a whiskey check, and today I'm going to be enjoying another rye that is, I guess we'll call it allocated, right? It is allocated. Maybe not to the same degree, but in some way, I'm going to be drinking this Midwinter's Night's Dram out of High West. And again, that is another good-looking bottle. It's a pretty good-looking bottle. And I think it feels real appropriate for right now, a cold and rainy January here in SoCal. Anyways, to whiskey, because let's face it, you can never drink too much of it. You can only just drink it too fast. Cheers. All right, so let's talk about the wild and woolly world of hunting Van Winkles, which sounds like a Dr. Seuss novel. The bottle that we won in the raffle, again, is this Van Winkle Family Reserve 13-year-old rye. And that's right, it is a rye. No, I had gone to talk to some other bourbon folks at a liquor store nearby here, and they were skeptical about the fact that they had a rye. They didn't even know. I didn't even know, but I guess they do. Now, there's not a ton of information on this one about it specifically, other than the fact that it has an ABV of 47.8%. Obviously, it is aged 13 years, and the MSRP on it is at $119.99. And honestly, the most astonishing aspect about this, aside from all those other great things, and probably aside from the fact that it's probably delicious, is the fact that we also got it for $119.99 because we won an ad hoc raffle by one of our local grocery stores. And yes, I feel very blessed and very humbled and very excited to be able to win it. And yes, I will open it. I'm not holding this on to be a trophy or anything like that. We'll open it up, and in fact, you all will probably be the first people to see. All right, so let's talk about hunting the Van Winkles in general, because there's a lot more to it than just rolling up to the counter, putting your money down on the counter, and saying, I want a Van Winkle. And first of all, I have no idea who is to blame, but all the Pappy Van Winkles and bourbon writ large have blown up over the last couple of years. And like anything else that has a set price at one price, but a market value that is leaps and bounds over that, things start to get very, very competitive to try to get them. Whether you are one of those evil resellers or a dyed-in-the-wool Pappy lover from way back in the day or an intermediate whiskey drinker like myself, you're going to have to deal with the competition and the pressure that those increased resales prices put on the whole market as altogether. In fact, when we went to pick this one up, the person who was working at the store in the liquor section had that specifically as a result of this specific bottle. There were people who had tried to break in the back of the store through the back door, and even an open case of assault on a worker from someone who was adamant that they should be able to buy it. So when it comes to Pappy, things can get out of control real quick. I don't really get that side of it, but I mean, it's crazy. But over the last year, the wife and I, we had put a lot of effort into trying to get our first bottle of Pappy with the simple criteria that one, it had to be authentic, and two, and that was pretty easy, two, and the more difficult one is that it had to be at a reasonable price, at least for the first bottle. Now here in California, there's a couple ways that I've found, or that we've tried to at least try to get the Pappy, and each has their own kind of cost as well as their benefits in both time and money. Now, to sum it up in the shortest possible terms, the more guaranteed you are of getting a bottle, the more expensive it'll be. Now, inversely, the less likely you are to get a bottle, the higher the risk of not getting a bottle, the cheaper it becomes. So I'm going to do these in the order of least expensive to most expensive acquisition arrangements. First, and probably the cheapest way to get a bottle of Pappy, like I said, involves the highest risk of actually not being able to get the bottle is at the big box stores. So like a Costco or Total Wine or Bevmo. Some Costcos, they do get Pappy. I don't really know how they figure out which one gets it within their system, but I'm pretty sure for Costco, demographics is destiny. So if you live in Omaha, Nebraska, shout out to Omaha, Nebraska, the likelihood of getting a Pappy at your Costco is probably next to zero. But if you live in Washington, D.C., for example, then those odds go up substantially. But since Costco constantly has bottles coming in and out, and now since they are actively concealing when highly sought after bourbons and whiskeys in general come in, think like Pappy Van Winkle, birthday bourbons, Yamazaki 18s, things like that, you just kind of gotta randomly show up to get it or know a guy who's willing to leak the info to you, which is sort of unfair. Or you could, my strategy as well, is drive by every morning and see if there's a line of taters out front and hope that they know more than you do. Other than that, Costco, pretty tight-lipped about how and when their whiskeys are to come in. So the likelihood of getting a Pappy at a Costco is very unlikely because you have to be there not only at the right day, but also at the right time, and you have to beat out all the other folks who are doing the exact same thing. But the advantage is that you can get a bottle that sells for $2,500 at $119 or at MSRP. So that is the advantage if you happen to win out on that day. Next is Total Wine specifically. And I'll put a link up around here because we actually did win one of the raffles for a bottle of Blanton. So I'll keep it sort of short. And if you want to see more details, click the link. But Total Wine is a system to track how much you buy. And if you hit a specific threshold of purchasing throughout the year, you can be a part of their rewards program. The top level, I think, is at $2,500 a year that you have to spend in the store. And then you get something called the Grand Reserve status. Now, roughly on a quarterly basis, they do a raffle for their Grand Reserve members where they raffle off everything from Blantons to Old Fitz to Wellers. And I think one of those quarters, they actually do a Pappy and B-Tac raffle as well. I know here, at least in California, these highly allocated bottles or the Wellers and things like that, they will never, ever, ever hit the shelf. You will not see them on the shelf because they hold all those for the raffle and for those Grand Reserve members who win the raffle. Now, this seems relatively fair because, I guess in a sense, it's not fair. I get that because not everyone spends that much money on it. That's totally a valid point. But it also is sort of fair because the rules are clear, the criteria for entry are achievable, and the selection process is open and kind of honest. At least it doesn't seem like there's any graft going on there. So the nice thing about it is that if you can get in the raffle, you likely have the same chance of being able to get a bottle of Pappy as the next person who is in that raffle. So it's not like, someone knows a guy and they're winning it. At least I don't think so. And you have a real chance of actually winning it, although it's unlikely. So again, this still goes in one of those categories where the risk of not getting it is pretty high. And also the cost is sort of high at $2,500. So, that's another way you can do it. Now, setting Total Wine aside, you could go to a grocery store and kind of work with them because, like for us, this one, I had never been to this grocery store before. We just put our name in the hat, and then a couple weeks later, they called us and said that you won. But some grocery stores will have these ad hoc raffles for them if they know they're going to get a highly allocated bottle in. Some of them kind of go by a first come, first serve mentality. They can do it that way. Or some of them, you kind of got to build a relationship with the liquor department person, which takes time and it takes money. I mean, it really does. But if you can schmooze them a little bit and they can get you into the right raffle or even offer you a bottle outright, then, it's worth it. But just bear in mind, you're going to have to endure a lot of idle chat and like pictures of family and interpersonal contact about whiskey and all those kinds of things. And if that's not kind of who you are, then it may not be worth it for you to do it that way. But I feel like that's a little bit higher way of possibly getting a bottle. Now, last is my favorite on the list, at least as far as being both wild and woolly, which is the local mom and pop liquor stores. You gotta love them. This is where things get a bit, we'll call it unorthodox. Because the local liquor store, they really have a pretty free hand to set up how they want to distribute any of their allocated bottles in any way that they want. And it can be as much as, oh, I have a great relationship with the owner, and then he offered to me one, to I bought a semi-truck with a Fireball, or, hey, I just paid 300% over the price, or 100%, or 1,000%, or whatever they're charging, and that can get you the bottle. But also I've seen where they do Pappy drops, where they'll put a bottle of Pappy in like a brown paper bag full of other whiskeys, and then a bunch of paper bags out, and you get to choose one, and if you're the lucky person, they'll have one bottle of Pappy in there for maybe like 200 bottles. So that one's kind of cool. Or they'll do like Instagram groups or Facebook groups, and as long as you kind of stay up to date on their feed and kind of check up with them, you oftentimes have an opportunity to buy one of those bottles when they first come out, because you're the first person to see it, because they'll post it on those Instagrams. Now, those will be at absurd prices. Let's be fair about this. They're going to be at absurd prices, but like I said, it's the easiest way to get it, because you just see it, just transactional. You pay the money and then you get the bottle. You don't have to go to anyone's t-ball practices. You don't have to see the pictures of the kids. You don't have to chat with them at all. And if you are someone who doesn't have the time or the inclination to do that, pay the extra money. It's totally worth it, rather than have to drive around and do all those kinds of things. And last, there's a liquor store who just overprices it. And again, that might be a good option. I know you think, why would I pay 100% or 1,000% or whatever more for a bottle? But you know what? If you need to get a bottle, if your life depends on it, there's always that one liquor store somewhere with a dusty bottle of Pappy on the very top shelf that hasn't been touched in the last 5 years because they're asking $5,000 for it. But you know what? If you needed it, it's there. And so, again, it is the most expensive, but also the most likelihood of actually getting one. So those are the kind of the options that we've seen so far. And we just got lucky with the raffle this year. But ultimately, it's up to you what you feel is most comfortable, what you can, what you want to put into it as far as money and time. All that plays into it. All right, so let's get down to brass tacks. Is it worth it? Let me think about this for a second. I guess it depends on how you define it and how much your time is worth, because what you don't pay in money, you are definitely going to pay in time and effort, sweat equity, if you will. In reality, for me, I like the process, I like the human interaction, and I like the hunt. It's something that the wife and I enjoy doing together. It would probably be cheaper just to pay the 1,000% more online, or go get the dusty bottle on the top shelf, rather than driving around and taking the hours and remembering people's names and waiting the turn in line to be able to be the next guy up to get it. But again, for me, I like the process. I like the interaction, and I like talking about bourbon. So yeah, for me, definitely worth it. All right, so that's it for today, and I hope that you enjoyed this video. And if you did, if you like the hauls, the wanders, the reviews, the unbottlings, the unboxings, the tastings, and all the amazing stuff we got cooking up for you. We got some pretty great stuff cooking up for you. Don't forget to like and subscribe. It is good for the channel. It really helps us out. It's great for your whiskey mojo. It pleases the whiskey gods. And you get notifications when our newest videos come out on Sunday, sometimes in between. All right, so now with that, just remember, if you do find a whiskey that you love, just buy it. Because if you don't, somebody else surely will, or they might even win it. In this case, it might even be me. Cheers.